Scott, when we were talking about this theme a few weeks ago, you said something interesting that I didn't quite understand, and maybe you can explain to all of us. You said it's very important that the CDMO is set up to be back integrated in the supply chain. What do you mean by a CDMO being set up as back integrated in the supply chain?
Certainly. It kind of pings off of what John just asked. And philosophically, it's okay to have your manufacturers source your critical materials. One thing I'd like to note is all your regulatory filings, once you get past a certain point, you're going to disclose who they are, what they make, and how they make it. So that means the sponsor is ultimately responsible, irrespective of the manufacturer. And then, of course, there's post-approval changes, whatnot, that can happen. So what I'm referring to is, imagine you have multiple vendors that are funneling into your supply chain for your final or GMP materials. One of them, at least this is my philosophy, should in theory be able to back integrate into the starting materials that you need. So for example, should there be a fundamental global supply disruption, Suez Canal, COVID shutdowns, whatever, they possess the ability to manufacture and supply the critical raw materials that they would need to further process your material to meet your needs and goals. So, and always, in a perfect world, there would always be an eye towards that. And that should, in a weird way, can be planned up front without any fundamental change in expenses or timing. But it has to be a sense of awareness that regardless of them being able to source materials, there may come a time where those materials are fundamentally unable to be delivered. And what is their backup? So you always have a backup to your vendors and a backup to that backup. And then, of course, ultimately, you can even have a third line backup, which I've been very fortunate and, have used in various ways over the years.
So,
okay, very good.
Sorry, it sounds like that's something that a supply agreement would capture, right?
A supply agreement, and I get your point, and we've done many of those. The challenge is, okay, you have a supply agreement, but they can't source the materials that you need because there's been a global shutdown, right? And they can't procure materials because there's no shipping between nations, for the sake of argument. So you can have all the agreements in the universe. It's still not making you API or drug product, right. I guess. So it's just another layer of paranoia, I guess, I bring to my role, is that I imagine things happening, not to be doom and gloom, but imagine things happening so that if something does occur, and COVID did occur, you're prepared. You already have plans. So geopolitical hedging on the supply chain, geopolitical hedging and redundancy in the critical raw materials. And I know for the biomanufacturing, things like media or buffers are critical, right? Like super trace minerals can be a fundamental challenge, right? So all these types of things. So obviously it's something I'm excited about because it's kind of like playing a chess game. What could happen, and not being stupid about it or spending all the money trying to prevent a thing that is impossible, but looking at the circumstances, there's a reasonable probability we could need this. So how will we address it? So it's part of the disaster planning, disaster recovery, all those things, and that includes quality. What if we're unable, as Kim had pointed out, to do the audits? How do we do virtual audits? How do we supplement that in the future? We can do the paper thing, we can do the Google Glasses thing, but what is formally the plan? Or if you're doing medicine to patient like you are, and that is so critical. I can't imagine the quality constraints and attention to detail that's required, where every single item is its own GMP product.